Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories, at least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Welcome to Safety Wars. It happens. I mean, it's live radio. From the border of liberty and prosperity and the highway to the north, this is Safety Wars. Now I know I have to edit that out for the podcast. So, from the border of liberty and prosperity and the highway to the north, this is Safety Wars for Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. I'm able to do a live program tonight. My wife is back. Welcome back, honey. So, what's going on out there? We're headed into the weekend. Thank God. Now let's go back to the Matrix here. We're headed back into the week. We're headed on over into the weekend. One more day. Sailing right through Thursday into Friday, right? I'll pull another radio show. That's Thursday, the day of Thor, hammered down. Okay, so what are we going to talk about tonight? So we had another interview from the International Conference on Climate Change last month. We're going to be talking to someone from the Creative Society, Anastasia, and she will discuss her theories on global warming. She's a researcher originally from Russia who is working in the chemical industry in this country. Specifically in manufacturing, and her research team believes, I'll let her talk on that. This whole climate change thing there's a different mechanism for it, other than the consensus, right? Consensus is not truth. Science is not always a democracy. So, we're going to have that. That's going to start at roughly 37 minutes into the hour, now that I screwed up the first 2 minutes not having the microphone on. We're going to go into our regular ocean news and views. Now, this morning, Thursday morning is usually when I have the safety meetings on any of the jobs that I manage. We try to make them the same for the company at all the jobs, 7 a.m. every Thursday morning. Again, that's the ritual type thing that we talk about here on the program, where you have to get into a ritual so everyone knows on Thursday we're having a safety meeting. This way everybody's able to plan for it. And the reason why I have it on Thursday is we can find out what's going on all week, and then we discuss any safety issues that come up at the meeting. And it also gives everybody a chance to have some input. I let the workers choose the safety meetings. No, how do you like that? Have the work? No, we have regulatory topics we have to cover and things. But how about we have you let the workers choose the topic? How's that for an approach? This way, they're going to be more interested, more engaged. So we have a lot of news going on here. So this morning at the safety meeting, we had somebody talk about, one of the other auditors had pointed stuff out, and the guy says, look, why are we going into this? We have a safe job site. We don't have any problems. We don't have any accidents, incidents, or illnesses. Didn't say it in those words, but those are what you're used to hearing on this show. I said, well, and and it's repetition. All right. I said, so I asked, try to ask a question, trying to get the person to think a little bit. I said, look, I said, so with that way of thinking, right? That's how you're going to define what safe is, right? 0 accidents, 0 illnesses, 0 injuries. What happens if you have 1 injury? Are you now an unsafe site? Something to think about. I said the other thing is this. We would like to have leading indicators and try to anticipate hazards. So we all work together here and trying to anticipate hazards. You guys are the experts in the work. We work together. I know what I know, but you know a whole hell of a lot more than I do about what specifically you're doing. Wouldn't you rather have some controls in place ahead of time? So what do you mean? I said, well, let's say that you have equipment that you're using as a construction site that has guards on it, right? It says, yeah, we do. I said, well, what are the protections here that you have in place? You have the guards. You have your training. You have equipment use. You have a lot of stuff on there. And the last thing that you have is your PPE, right? Yeah, I said, well, if any one of those fails, you still have your PPE on, right? Any of the guards or procedure. He says, yeah. I said, okay. How about with fall protection? He says, well, what about fall protection? I said, well, kind of wear fall protection here. One is that, the law, you have the regulations there, obviously. And you go through the hierarchy of controls, all of that stuff. I said, on other jobs, they don't wear fall protection at all in this situation. So what are they relying on? Well, I said, well, they're relying on you not taking a misstep, you being focused on what's going on around you so you don't fall into the area. They're relying on you. You have a vertigo situation, right? On occasion, you said you're relying on you not having vertigo. I said they're relying on you, and by the way, we'll talk about that later on. I told them you have all this other stuff going on that you're relying on, so you don't fall in. Any one of those fails, you're falling in. When you're wearing fall protection, where if you do fail, that doesn't mean that you put fall protection on, doesn't mean that you're all powerful and you could start, rappelling down the side, right? Not that kind of fall protection. But any of those fail, right? All those practices and everything else fail. Now you still have the PPE there, right? You have multiple guards. You have multiple safeguards. You have multiple things going on here. You have lack of tripping hazards. You have housekeeping. You have many different things that go into fall protection, railing system, the whole thing. So that's where we need to get going here on this site, I said, is that with that levels of control, levels of safeguards. So one of the older, more experienced gentlemen, this is a relatively young laborer. One of the other gentlemen said, look, we understand what you're talking about, Jim. You got to realize he's new to this. He says, what you're saying makes sense to us. What you're saying, right, is a mature way of looking at things. He says, we go out to these other jobs out there, and they start screaming and yelling at us and writing us up for this, that, the other thing, blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm not going to say I'll never write someone up. But that's like the last thing you want to do. We much rather put up controls and not be antagonistic towards people and try to coach them along, get the right equipment, right, and everything else. And he says, yeah, this is like the most relaxed job I've ever been on. With things, we just come in here, do our work, do our right thing, and maybe we have a couple of laughs throughout the day, and a little bit of camaraderie, and then we go home. We go home safe, and we're not all stressed out that the safety guy is looking over us. So, well, that's what we Got to do. That's what, if you're a safety professional, that's what you got to do. It's called leadership, right? I'm not patting myself on the back, but this is the way I run jobs. Less antagonism, right? Getting along with people, but you still got to enforce the rules and the job standards and everything else that goes into it. But the other thing is, if you treat them antagonistically, they'll deliberately not do stuff. How's that? Deliberately not do stuff. Oh, well, the safety guy is coming. Now, I had a weird experience last year on a project where, and you expect that, the safety guy is coming. You hear that. You hear, maybe a signal. Someone coughs, some phone calls on the radio, any one of those things. One of the jobs I was on, they actually, and I'm like, man, I know that signal. What was it? It was the rebel. Pardon me. It was the rebel yell from the Civil War, which is also a KKK symbol. I said, I pulled their supervisors. I told them what was going on. I said, they couldn't think of a better signal than KKK signal they're setting up. Doesn't make sense. Well, what do you mean? And I played it for him. He said, was that what that was? Yeah, like you didn't know, right? Because he was one of the ones doing it. But anyway, so we had a little conversation. But anyway, that's what we try to do here on Safety Wars is we try to go out and have safety as safeguards in place, controls in place. Use whatever you want. Well, I don't like the word control because sometimes people feel like you're removing their agency with that, their ability to make decisions. But what kind of controls are we going to have in place? And safeguards, and there are many. And Todd Conklin said on his podcast the other day, rather than send people out on a safety audit to find out what's wrong, send them out on a safety audit to figure out, hey, what controls do we have in place, and can we add controls to different processes so it makes the job safer? Much better, much more optimistic approach on that, and it gets people talking and everything else. So it's more or less like a learning team. Well, we have a lot of news. Like I said, let me get to it, and then we'll go in there. Let's take a brief commercial break here, and we'll come back.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today.
In the professional safety community, communication and planning are just a few keys to your program's success. The question many practitioners have is, where do I start? Dr. Jay Allen, the creator of the Safety FM platform and host of the Rated R Safety Show, has built a global foundation to help you along the way. Go to safetyfm.com and listen to some of the industry's best and most involved professionals, including Blaine Hoffman with the Safety Pro, Sam Goodman with the Hop Nerd, Sheldon Primus with the Safety Consultant, Jim Pozell with Safety Wars, Emily Elrod with Unapologetically Bold, and many others. As individuals, we can do great things, but as a team, we become amazing. Dial into safetyfm.com today and surround yourself with a powerful force of knowledge and support.
OSHA recordables, catastrophic losses, environmental disasters. You want answers? So do I. This is Jim Posel with Safety Wars.
That's my daddy.
And yes, I am your daddy. Okay. Here we have from the OSHA news briefs from today. OSHA and the Colorado Healthcare Association have signed an ambassador-level alliance to provide long-term care workers in Colorado with information, guidance, and access to training resources. The alliance includes an emphasis on sharing information about common hazards in the healthcare industry and whistleblower protection laws. Ambassador-level alliances are recognized for working collaboratively on safety and health issues raised by stakeholders. Unlike basic alliances, ambassador agreements remain in effect for the duration of an ongoing cooperative relationship. So, what are some of the hazards from healthcare workers, other than the obvious biological hazards, right? Bloodborne pathogens, things of that nature, ergonomic stressors, repetitive motions, back injuries. Those are the big ones, right? That you see faced out there, as well as stress. Man, does EPA? No, when I'm doing work for European companies, they're amazed with you guys don't regulate stress at work. I said very few companies do. It's not a requirement. They most likely do it through their insurance company, and they're like, wow, wow, right? So so that's why we have a 16-hour workday here. EPA announces and this is from the EPA website. EPA announces $170 million in WIFIA loan. We'll find out what that is. To help limit water shortages in San Diego County, California. So out west, they had a little bit of a climate change out there from the 1850s. So some of the history out west, California, is historically that's been an arid region. Now, this isn't in the EPA report, but this is just for me. All right. And it's gotten, except for a short period of time in 1700s, 1800s, something like that, in early 1900s. And it's been getting drier and drier out there. It's just the way it is. So a lot of these areas are now, they realize that they built all these cities in arid areas. Now, what annoys the hell out of me, right? What's California? What's to the west of California? I know, Catalina Island. I know. Sammy Hagar concert, birthday bash one year during. I got that. Catalina Island, a wise guy. Hawaii. Yeah. Okay. Great. Something like the Pacific Ocean. Why aren't they just desalinating water? I wonder if there's ever been a cost-benefit analysis for this, because that seems to me might be a better way of doing things. So that's been my question. So this is what I'm surprised about here. Today, the U.S. EPA announced a $170 million Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, that's WIFIA, loan to Poseidon Resources in San Diego, California, to support its Carlsbad desalination plant intake modification and wetlands project, which will help provide sustainable access to drinking water and protect local coastal wetlands. Diversifying and stretching precious water resources is an essential in the water scarce West, said EPA Assistant Administrator for Water, Radhika Fox. What does a fox say? Well, we just told you. The WIFIA loan to Poseidon Resources in San Diego County will be used for both upgrading the drinking water desalination plant to help address water shortages, stretch precious water supplies, and protect critical marine habitats in San Diego Bay. The Carlsbad desalination plant provides approximately 10% of the San Diego County's region's water supply. So this is good, right? They have a desalination plant. I mean, they should probably have more of them. That's probably where you want to go. That would, I don't know. There's no excuse. And this is the other thing. I spent a lot of time in California over the years. You go everywhere, and the waste of water on golf courses and everything else out there is unbelievable, right? And even back, I'm not picking on only California. Most of these droughts are man-made, right? From improper use of water, lack of planning, going back to our safety stuff out there, right? With work safeguards, work controls, things of that nature. Anyway, another one from the U.S. Department of Labor. The U.S. Department of Labor sues Kansas restaurant's owner to recover You're going to love this number. $771,000 in minimum wage and overtime back wages, damages for 75 employees. U.S. DOL has filed suit against the owner of 2 Kansas restaurants who allegedly denied minimum and overtime wages to kitchen staff, servers, hosts, and food runners, and some worked as many as 66 hours per week. Considering what the minimum wages are for people in restaurants often, right, especially the servers, that's a lot of freaking money there, you know? The court filing comes after investigation by the department's Wage and Hour Division that identified the violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act and ordered the employers to pay $771,794. That's includes back wages and liquidated damages to 75 employees to resolve its infractions. Specifically, division investigators determined employers paid servers a cash wage of $2.30 per hour, and either paid them for 80 hours of pay period, regardless of number of hours they worked, or paid overtime, and 1.5 of their cash wage of $2.30 per hour for overtime. So, by law, employers must pay tipped workers time and 1/2 the minimum wage plus the tip credit. I never really understood it, right? Yeah, I'm confused. But anyway, federal court orders aids Department of Labor recovery of $265,000 in back wages for 182 employees of a Milford drywall contractor. This is Milford, Ohio. Again, making sure, you know, and if you're a contractor, this is, right? This is an issue. I've worked with contractors who hire subcontractors. That's where the problem ends up, where they're billing out outrageous amounts and then paying these people not even a minimum wage on here, right? So the resolution is a little bit standard, but some things, right? They're not allowed to hire any individual as a reported independent contractor. Hire only subcontractors whose businesses are registered in the state where work is being performed. Hire a third-party auditor to review company payroll. Require subcontractors to sign affidavits attesting to Fair Labor Standards Act compliance. Allow the division to seize remaining assets in the company's account receivable up to the amount of remaining payments due if the employer defaults on payments, and to fully comply in the future. So, again, what does that have to do with safety? It has a hell of a lot to do with safety, because if they're not paying people minimum wage, what kind of workers are they getting, number one? And number two, are those workers trained? Are they covered by workers' comp, right? Any of that? Are they going to, and everything else that goes along with it? They're a bear to manage. I mean, we've had people who, in this situation, that come with workers. Now, they work on a construction site. They're in flip-flops. And they know no hard hats, no safety glasses, no gloves. Gloves, forget about it. And flip-flops and shorts. And they want to go out and work on a construction site. I mean, it's ridiculous. Some news from the Centers for Disease Control. TB is still here. New CDC data shows U.S. cases increased again in 2022. Preliminary tuberculosis data released by the CDC ahead of World TB Day show that the number of U.S. tuberculosis disease cases increased 5% in 2022 to 8,300 cases. The CDC is calling on healthcare providers and communities disproportionately affected by TB to test. Right? So the TB disease cases increased in 2022, but did not return to pre-pandemic levels. Autism prevalence is higher, according to data from 11 communities. Second report highlights disruptions in early autism detection at the start of COVID-19 pandemic. So, no, we're still going to be suffering from the effects of the pandemic for a long time. 1 in 36 8-year-old children have been identified with autism. This is the press release. With autism spectrum disorder, according to analysis published today in CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. The new findings are higher than previous 2018 estimate that found a prevalence of 1 in 44. The data come from 11 communities in the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network, ADDM, and are not representative of the entire U.S. A second report on 4-year-old children in the same 11 communities highlights the impact of COVID-19, showing disruptions in progress in early autism detection. In the early months of the pandemic, 4-year-old children were less likely to have an evaluation or be identified with ASD, that is autism spectrum disorder, than 8-year-old children when they were the same age. This coincides with interruptions in childcare and health services. So basically, the pandemic screwed everything up. Something else that's screwed up is the economy. So we're going to go into our financial markets. Dow Jones Industrial finished up 32,105, up 0.23%. S&P 500 is at 39,4872, up 0.3%. NASDAQ up to 11,787.40, up by 1.01%. Russell 2000 sank by 0.41% to 1720.29. U.S. Treasury note 10-year is up to 3.4%. Bitcoin is at 28,362.72, and crude oil sank to 69.29 a barrel. Going on to precious metals. Gold is over 2,000 ounces, 2,002.10. Silver is up 23.30, up from the last time we talked about it here. It's up. Platinum is up $1,005. Palladium is up to $14.70.50, right? So up from yesterday. So again, remember, those commodity prices are always changing here. So here we have the checkup with Dr. Wen, a newsletter, right, on the Washington Post. It mentioned an article you want to check out. Guess what? Social media use is linked to depression in teens. Really? Next thing you're going to tell me the sky is blue, right? Florida State Representative, oh, this is funny. Someone did this at a safety meeting, several safety meetings on a job. It took them months to figure it out. A Florida State Representative appeared to get trolled by raunchy fake names during his committee's hearing considering several bills. This was Florida House Civil Justice Subcommittee. The chairman was Will Robinson. Danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger. There used to be a show called Lost in Space. Moved to the committee into public testimony on fellow GOP, right? Blah, blah, blah. So everything was going good, and then he started reading off names of people who were in opposition of a bill. All right. So here we go. Hey, I'm quoting here. Anita Dix is an appointment, Robinson said, looking around the room as the woman next to him covered her smile. Waves in opposition. Holden Hiscock is also an opponent, he continued on, looking around the room again. Waves in opposition. Right? At that point, everybody started laughing, apparently. But anyway, gotta watch for those names, right? I mean, it was funny to some of the names on that safety meeting because they were fake near miss reports someone was putting in, and they put fake names on there, and it was just real, the guy looked like Mr. Peterman from Seinfeld and had the same exact delivery, right, of it. Okay. Bipartisan senators push to ban China from buying U.S. farmland. A group of bipartisan U.S. senators introduced a bill on Wednesday to ban the purchase of U.S. farmland by Chinese persons and entities. Now, what's this about? Couple of things. Number one, sovereign funds are coming in. That means funds from other countries buying up American farmland to export agriculture to whatever the country is. Saudi Arabia has been named. China apparently has been named, but this is also a security issue because they're buying up lands around military bases. As we all know, especially with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, if you start a business in China, you are automatically part of the CCP and the military and everything else. So what they're worried about is that agricultural land gets bought up and then they don't create agriculture. And it creates a supply chain issue and everything else. So as of December 31st, 2020, last time that they kept statistics, China owned 325,686 acres of U.S. agricultural land, according to the Department of Agriculture. While the acreage under Chinese ownership is slightly less than 1% of all foreign-held agricultural land, it is an increase of 20-fold from previous numbers in 2010. So, again, that we're in a peeing match with China here. And, food security. I was listening to an interview of, hold on, I have her name right here. She was on Coast to Coast AM last night, and as you know, I was on Coast to Coast AM over the weekend. Hold on. Who was it last night? Hold on. Oh, I hate this. Okay, food preparedness was by the guest was Marjorie Wildcraft, who on food shortages. And, I listened to the program and I said, oh, well, we knew this was coming for an awful long time. Food shortages. They've been talking, I do disaster preparation. We know all about food shortages that have been predicted for literally generations. Well, apparently it's coming to fruition. I love pepperoni. My son and I, we make pepperoni sandwiches. I like cheese and crackers and pepperoni and things of that nature. Guess what? Same price of pepperoni didn't go up. For a package was the same price, but now it's half the amount. How do you like that? All right. So you spend $101. I picked up groceries for one of the projects I managed yesterday. They say, hey, Jimmy, on the way in, can you make a grocery run? We're out of coffee here. So I'll make it. It's like at the end of it, you spend $50 and you're like, what the hell did I just buy? That's inflation, right? Again, something that you need to be aware of. Let's see how we're doing on time here. So we're going to be We're going to be going right into our interview right here. So if we have a little bit of dead air, I apologize here. And we'll see you tomorrow. This is our interview with from the Creative Society, who I met at. Okay, we are live right now. Let me make sure everything's working here. Yes, we got everything. Okay, I am here. I got to read this with Anastasia Ashigriba. I got it right?
Yes.
Somewhat right.
Yes, that's correct.
She is with the Creative Society, and she's Russian educated, has a PhD from chemistry, but I'm going to let her do her introduction here. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hello, Jim. Hello, Jim. Thanks a lot for invitation. My name is Anastasia Pashigriva, and I'm PhD chemist. Currently, I work for R&D for the industrial company, and we're designing like chemical plants and new technologies in gas processing things. But I'm here as a part of the Creative Society. I'm volunteer for Creative Society, and Creative Society is an international volunteering movement which unites people from 180 countries, and everything we do in our free time.
That's great. So, are you local here or down in Orlando?
We are. I live in St. Louis, Missouri,
A little
and
bit of a ride.
yes, a little bit.
So, I was watching with your discussion here with one of your colleagues on basically on ocean currents and also volcanic activity here on this planet, but also on other planets also. Can you briefly go into that? I know it's a 2.5 hour long presentation you have on YouTube, which we're going to try to link up with this podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, for bringing it. This is very important presentation. It is, in this presentation, we are talking about 12,000 year cycle. It is the major cycle for the natural disasters, and this information is essentially presenting coherent presentation of what's going on with the climate and with the natural disaster right now, including the glaciers melting, the changes in the currents, warming of the ocean, earthquakes, and eruptions, and accordingly, atmospheric changes, and that all is linked to the changes which is occurring currently in the Earth core, and this all impact is not only changing on Earth, but it's also changes we observe on other planets of the solar system and the sun itself, and it's all indication for some external factor which we call galactic radiation, and essentially this is the causing for this 12,000 year cycle, and all geological evidence really showing that the Earth going through this process every 12,000 years, and kind of whole humanity is going through this bottleneck for survival, and Creative Society is really making research in this area, and we're making monitoring for natural disasters, and so far everything falls in this model.
So one of our focuses here on Safety Wars, right, industrial safety, but we talk, especially every September, disaster preparation. We also do safety training for disaster response workers. I'm an authorized trainer for that, and also for environmental cleanups and everything else with that. Average person, by the way, if you're in the industry, quote unquote, the industry, I've heard about this cycle going back at least 15 years, 20 years. This is not new information, but it's probably new information for the average person out there. And we're all about, like I said before the interview, don't be manipulated, be informed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. For the average person, what does this mean? This new data that you have, this new information, quote unquote new, at least it's new for them. What does this mean? What should we, as we know, earthquakes, we're just, I work with a bunch of Turkish folks, and it's horrible what's going on there in Turkey. I have to hear the stories every day. What does it mean for the average person here? Because I tell you what, when you see the graphic, the number of earthquakes around the Pacific Rim, and areas like Turkey seems to be around water.
Yeah.
What does this mean for them?
So for average person, it means that if you live in a seismically active region, then the most probably you will be impacted. And also we see that the earthquakes developing in kind of considered untypical places because of a lot of crust breakages are taking place. And the thing that is that it's pretty hard to understand what is a safe area. And for average person, you really need to understand that this is going on. That you need to prepare, like to have this 72 survival bag, because we monitor. It's not only about earthquakes. We observe the increase in natural disasters, and we document that. And we observe the increase in the tornadoes, and in the United States and in Europe, including. It was absolutely untypical for Europe, but it's going on right now.
So I know with the global warming, that's what we're here for, the International Conference on Climate Change. It seems like one side is blaming global climate change is causing all these tornadoes and this and that, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned tornadoes because that's a specific atmospheric hazard. It seems like what your research has shown, your organization and everything else, that it might actually be more to do with geological issues.
Yeah, you're right.
Than carbon dioxide.
I'm really impressed because you catch this so fast. I am really impressed. Thank you very much, Jim. Yes, and it's just it's a lot of things. We interview a lot of people from Heartland Institute, and they're absolutely right on bringing that the current warming is not related to CO2. It is absolute truth, and it's a lot of scientific basis for that. But it's also today was presented in one of the presentation with Joe Bastardi and Professor Vitirita that this warming is essentially caused it's coming from the ocean, and this ocean is heated from the bottom. And essentially, like, this is an indication of changes in the Earth core. So, like, it's all kind of we are in line with the message from this conference that it's not CO2, but there's like a lot of people saying there is no natural disasters, and we see a lot of manipulation on earthquake data, on natural disasters data, and the media is underreporting cases, so that we are kind of. A lot of people not aware of what's going on. They see that there is something changes, but since it's kind of like they are scared that it's because of CO2, they're forced to use all these like EV or like solar panels, but that will not work. The threat comes from the Earth core, and it is geological, like having geological origin.
So your take on this is slightly different than a lot of other folks, because there's a lot of people in this movement, whatever you want to call it, anti-climate change, whatever label. There's many of them. Let's say that natural disasters are not increasing. However, your data shows that certain types of natural disasters are increasing.
Absolutely.
With this. Now, I'm familiar with 12,000-year cycle and everything else with that whole thing, all right, which you just discussed. Where do you see this going in 10, 15, 20 years? Do you see an increase, a decrease? There's been a lot of data out there that says, like with the magnetic pole shift, things that happens most likely automatically. But as we know, magnetic north shifts, I forget how many miles every year.
It is 55 miles per year, compared to 10 years before 1995.
Wow. So where do you see this going in 10 years?
The sad thing, we don't have 10 years. And this was reported during our forum, Global Crisis, Our Survival in Unity. The mathematical model we presented, which was put together 10 years ago, and we checked it for 8 years. And what we said is that we have 5 to 6 years relatively stable years when we kind of cannot change our living conditions. If we don't proceed, if we don't change anything, then by 2030, the economical losses from natural disasters will be higher than GPT of all countries, and we will not be able to recover. And like what we observe, you can cut it out, just feel free. And what is horrible thing that based on this model, by 2036, the huge hydraulic impact is going to happen. But that means that it will happen like we are talking that there is very thin crust currently in the Mariana Trench, and the thickness of the crust, it is just 5 kilometers, and underneath we have a rising magma, and we know that Mariana Trench, it is over 11 kilometers deep. So like this mathematical model predicts that it will be major rupture which will cause the huge contact of a huge amount of magma with water. You know what happened then? Metal goes in contact with water.
Right.
You know how catastrophic it is.
Yeah.
So, and then we have this major rupture that creates really huge explosion, and that explosion can remove our atmosphere, and it will be the end of the life on our planet.
So, you have the Marianas Trench, just for a review. That's with the pressure of the water pushing
Yes,
downward.
yes.
And you have the magma coming up. This is one of the things that drives plate tectonics.
Yes.
Right? With the
Yeah,
separation.
yeah.
And you can see that South America and Africa.
Yeah.
Right? In there. So a rupture of that Marianas Trench, which you're saying is thinning, would be catastrophic for pretty much all life
Yes.
on the planet. That's okay. Now that we have that. Now, there's also, I heard you discussing the Yellowstone caldera.
Yeah.
And there's another one. I forget where that is.
Taupo volcano, Taupo super volcano in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
All right. What might happen there? Because I've heard about those for about 15 years, 20 years now, since I've been following this. What would happen with those? By the way, I'm loving this discussion.
Thank you.
I've had to dig deep in my mind to remember this. There was actually a movie, 2012, that came out in 2011 with John Cusack, who was the boyfriend of high school boyfriend of one of my friends, by the way, with the caldera breaching and everything. How does this all factor into this? Is this pretty much the same thing, or is there like a selection between the New Zealand, Yellowstone, and the Marianas Trench, or
So-
would this be all at the same time, one thing at a time? What happened?
Essentially, I think just what is the danger? Current danger, we observe that it's a lot of volcanic eruptions. So since November, after we had forum till now, till today is February, and we observe over 50 volcanic eruptions, and they are going on so-called hotspots. It's there, like it was the pre-existing magma chambers, and volcanoes going by doublets. So essentially, it is two of them. That is an indication of very high pressure in the system, because like they are working as a kind of like this pressure relief valve. One works like relative to enough. But then you see this activation of ordinary volcanoes. It means that magma made their way through the existing pathways. And it means that the magma will also go through the create non-existent pathways. And the most recent data really showing that magma could rise several kilometers within few days. So, and because it was believed that it is geological process and it takes like millions of years, then you will get this magma rising. But the current eruptions in Iceland showing super fast rate of eruption, enormous pressures, like pressure in one of the Iceland volcanoes recorded, it was like 5,000 bar. And this is really humongous pressure. I think it's 5 times higher than in Mariana Trench, on the bottom of Mariana Trench. And when we talk about supervolcanoes, then we see all this like rising of magma because of the changes in the earth core and additional energy it gets. It is activating supervolcanoes. And like right now, we collaborate with Mary Greeley, and she's in her news like recording Yellowstone thing. She's doing everyday thing. And
isn't she the one who's trying to develop a model for predicting earthquakes?
like we currently don't work with about predicting earthquakes, but we collaborate with scientists who doing that.
Yeah, that name that you mentioned, I've heard of her before many times.
Mary Greeley? Yes, she's brilliant. I strongly recommend her. She has YouTube channel and Twitter, and she is really up to bringing like all this disaster preparation information and this truthful information. She learned how to analyze all seismograms and everything by herself.
How did you get involved in this? This is your PhD in chemistry. You work with industrial types of plants, processes, this sort of thing. I wanted to ask you about that also. How did you get involved in this? This is very, I find this very interesting.
Yes.
Unbelievably.
Yes, absolutely. So it will probably sound strange.
Not on this program.
I always was feeling with kind of I'm not from the United States, and I had always feel that United States is going to be dangerous region in terms of the natural disasters, and that was from I don't know. I don't know from where I had this feel and understanding. But then once I learned about this mathematical model, which is essentially like showing like step by step what's going on, and once kind of I saw all that, it's kind of I was living with this feeling that it's going to something going to happen, and in the world. And once I saw that model, I recognized that I really cannot stay still, like just when you have this information, you have responsibility. And I feel that it's my duty to share this information with people. And what Creative Society brings forth that we as a humanity should unite our efforts, and only being united, we will be able to overcome such a huge threat like common natural disasters. And therefore we lift in human life as the highest value, because it needs to be embedded in every head, because we are talking about the huge threat. It's not about, like one nation which is worse for another. We really have one big fight which we need to win, and therefore I'm part of Creative Society.
So often the feeling that you describe, and I'm very familiar with it, it's called the quickening, right? That's what we call it in English. And it's almost like, it's biblical almost, the statement of quickening, or if you like Highlander, the movie and TV series, where it's almost like the book of Revelation describes it as a woman in labor, sort of thing, that kind of imagery. I'm not saying that's what I... Right, I know with me, and I'm not going to share the story here because this is about you, where I've had that feeling, and then at a certain point it subsided because I got involved with this and everything else. Where I got into the worry phase, into the action phase. Did that happen with you here, where you have these feelings of dread or of something's going to happen? Has this helped you discover all these mathematical models and everything that you discussed here? Has that helped you with getting through? Because that's psychological safety wellness. Do you still have that feeling?
Like I know what is going on, and the longer I work on this, kind of the more pieces coming together, and I see what's going on, and it's a kind of reality in which I live, and I think it's essentially my duty to deliver this information. Maybe it sounds very very strange. It's just because a lot of people cannot take this information and they are not prepared. But just day by day we see that it is true, and we see all how these puzzles coming together. And what we see right now, that things are developing much faster than we were expecting. And we really kind of this rush for Creative Society, it's that because we are all volunteers, understand this threat, and that we really need united efforts of people. We need everyone to be involved and sharing this information, because our YouTube channels were deleted recently. It was 25 channels deleted before. Yesterday it was other channels deleted where we interview scientists, where we talk about the earthquakes, where we talk about volcanic eruptions, and this is all being deleted. And this is really people really should get access to this information.
There are other online platforms I'll share with you that were recommended to me based on this, and I won't go into them here. So industrial safety, you're designing these plants and everything like that. How much is safety, you're doing in the United States, at what point does safety come into your process with engineering? Because I see a lot of engineering out there where, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then as a safety professional, you're like, I don't think that's going to work.
So I think our company having really strong culture on safety, and before you initiate any process or before you bring any new chemical, you go through the safety procedures, and at least you should be understanding what are the dangers, how you threat the spills and all this information. If you're building the pilot plant, then you understand where what is the high pressure system, how electricity work, what will happen with your chemical before, after, and all this process should be considered before bringing anything to the lab.
Right. That says it all right there. I want to thank you. This has been a phenomenal discussion. I was not expecting all this information here, because this has been an interest of mine for many years, as the listeners know, right, with disasters and everything else. But you've given everybody a lot to think about here. And I look forward to maybe working with you folks in the very near future. We learn about that.
We would be really happy, and you can find more information from creativesociety.com, from our YouTube channel, Creative Society. And we are really open, and we really need more people who understand what's going on.
Okay, thank you. That was Anastasia Azhigrieva. I got it right.
Yes.
I hope.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim.
Russia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is your safety training old, stale, and hackneyed? Is your safety trainer still preaching a warped version of behavior-based safety? How about safety training that actually addresses your hazards in your workplaces and is not standardized baloney from 25 years ago? Contact the Safety Wars team at safetywars.com or call Jim Posel at 845-269-5772. Remember, if you're receiving this message, you are the solution to unsafe workplaces.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.